when you really start thinking about it, people think, well, gee, you know, the theory of evolution is Johnny-come-lately theory. But we have had the concept of gradual change in species for longer than we've understood that germs cause disease, and for longer than we've understood the idea that matter is subdivided into units that we call atoms. So, interesting perspective. With that, let me introduce our three speakers. The first speaker tonight is going to be Paul Decelles, and Paul is on the faculty here at Johnson County Community College. His training is in entomology and evolutionary biology, appropriate for his speaking tonight. He has a PhD from the University of Kansas. Aside from biology, his interests include the relationship between science and religion, also appropriate for this evening's presentation. He also serves on the board of Kansas Citizens for Science and runs several blogs, including a science blog at the Lawrence Journal World called Dangerous Ideas. And this evening, Paul's topic will be some myths and misconceptions about evolution. The second, and Paul, did you raise your hand? Okay, there we go. So Paul will be our first speaker. Our second speaker will be Josh Rosenau, and so it sounds like he has a following already. That's not surprising, because he has the blog, and has had before he moved away, called Thoughts from Kansas. And he is currently on the staff at the National Center for Science Education, and is in charge of public information programs. Public information program director. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
Okay. So he has an official title, but we enjoy the fact that he blogs about our activities back here. Our final speaker for this evening will be Dave Burress, who is a retired economics professor from KU, was a founding board member for Kansas Citizens for Science, and is on the board of Ad Astra, which is a progressive Kansas policy think tank. Josh Rosenau.
Thanks. Before I dive into the topic and the title there, I just want to tell you a little bit about where I work. The crisis clinic there. National Center for Science Education is a national nonprofit dedicated to defending the teaching of evolution. We work with science teachers, we work with parents. In the Dover trial in 2005, we were scientific consultants to the plaintiffs, a group of parents who sued their school district over a pro-intelligent design creationist policy. So none of this is done alone. There's, of course, our executive director, Eugenie Scott, our deputy director, Glenn Branch, Louise Mead, our education outreach director, who does a lot to work directly with teachers, not just to prevent creationism from getting in or to deal with it once it's there, but really to work with them to improve the quality of evolution education, improve the quality of nature of science education. Peter Hess, our faith outreach director, is a Catholic theologian who does outreach to the faith community. As Paul was saying, there are big chunks of the faith community that are pro-evolution. You don't hear a lot from them, and anything we can do to sort of balance out that discussion a little bit does tend to help these things along. Eric Mickel does a lot of monitors the news tirelessly and does a lot of great work reaching out to scientific societies and other groups that we work with, including Americans United. Steve Newton has my same job title. The two of us, basically, if your kid comes home with a creationist pamphlet that their teacher was handing out, and you call us up, one of us is going to answer the phone, basically. And we'll talk you through it and see what we can do to try to resolve the situation. And finally, our communications director, Robert Lund, who communicates on our behalf. It's a relatively new position, but he deals with the media, he deals with a lot of that sort of outreach more than the rest of us do individually. So, pretty much all of the discussion here today and Paul made reference to this, is sort of centered around this issue, that if you ask people, as Pew did this summer, whether it's true or false that humans and other living things have evolved over time and that evolution is the result of natural processes such as natural selection, you ask scientists that question, including engineers and doctors and a range of other people, 87%. You get as close to unanimity as you're going to get a group of scientists to be, right? If you ask the general public that same question, about a third agree with that. So there's a disconnect here between where the scientific community is and where the general public is in terms of their understanding of these issues. And part of that comes from a long-standing tradition of anti-evolutionism going back easily to the Scopes trial and William Jennings Bryan, and just a long tradition of other things that have come along there. And I'm not going to do the whole history of that, which is fun, but for another day. I'm going to start the history a little bit before the Dover trial that I mentioned with the Edwards v. Aguilar decision from 1987, which struck down a series of laws, one law in particular from Louisiana, but standing in for a group of laws that had passed, including in Arkansas and other places, that said, if you want to teach evolution, okay, that's fine. They moved past trying to just outright ban evolution, but if you're going to teach evolution, you have to also teach creation science. You have to teach creationism, that the Earth is 6,000 years old, that life was created in its current form, or at least in a series of separate trees, a topic we'll get back to, that there was a global flood, all of these things. You have to teach that to balance out evolution. And the Supreme Court said, look, that's a religious idea. You can dress it up as science all you want, but it's a religious idea. It's not a scientific idea. And presenting it in science classes is inappropriate. And saying that you can't teach evolution unless you teach this religious idea is also not okay. In particular, Justice Brennan, writing for the court, said, left a little bit of wiggle room there. He said, we don't mean to imply that a legislature could never require that scientific critiques of prevailing scientific theories be taught. So some creationists picked up on that and thought that there might be a way to use that. And other creationists picked up on another line a couple sentences later saying that, of course, you can teach a variety of scientific theories about the origin of humankind, should they exist. The intelligent design movement that came up in Dover, that came up to a degree, or to more than a degree in Kansas in 2005, followed the second idea. Let's find an alternative theory. And the theory, the Discovery Institute Center for Science and Culture is sort of the institutional home of this. Locally, we've got the Intelligent Design Network and other groups, but sort of on an organizational level, the Discovery Institute is sort of where it all comes from. Of Pandas and People is the only extant ID, well, yeah, it's the only extant ID textbook to date. As far as anyone has been able to tell, the theory of intelligent design states that somewhere, at some point in time, someone did something, somehow, for some reason, that affected the history of life, somehow. Creation science was pretty specific, saying it's the Christian God who did this in this particular way over this time period, and the ID movement more or less takes the position that, well, that was a little too specific. So let's not specify who the designer is, let's not worry about whether the flood happened. The important thing is that evolution is wrong.